This is Dr. Martin's second mini lecture on chapter 26. What I'd like to talk about now are the reptiles, which is in section 1 of chapter 26. The first question we'll take on is, what is a reptile? And we could define a reptile certainly as a vertebrate. Number one, it's an animal that lays eggs that we call amniotic because of their special membranes. There are actually some exceptions to that, but number 3 has scaly skin, and 4, it lives on land. So that's kind of just a re-summary of what reptiles are. Within this particular class, this is class Reptilia, there are about a little bit more than 6,500 species, but we'll say it's right at that number. I'm sure it's more by now. And there's 3 groups within this particular class. So when we talk about reptiles, we are talking about turtles. We're talking about a group, this is actually an order, Squamata, that includes lizards and snakes. And lastly, we'll talk about the order Crocodilia. And did I spell that right? Nope, of course not. This obviously includes the alligators and crocodiles. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these briefly, and then we'll move on to the birds. Okay, most everyone can distinguish a turtle from other vertebrates, and that's because of its bony shell that encloses most of the body. Really, the only thing that will protrude are the front limbs and the hind limbs and the head. The shell is covered with scales, and those scales are made out of keratin. They lack teeth. They just have a ridge within their mouth. As far as habitat, it varies. Some are mostly aquatic, and some are mostly terrestrial. The term tortoise is given to turtles that exist or that live a terrestrial existence. Feeding, some turtles are herbivores, some are carnivores. Okay, so as I mentioned, these are the most distinctive of the reptiles. Let's move on to the second group. And so this is B. This is an order Squamata. This includes the lizards and snakes. Lizards four-legged reptiles. Their locomotion, or their movement, is kind of a side-to-side kind of movement with their limbs. They do have a tail, and of course they have scaly skin. They're mostly found in warm climates. They are, I'm going to add one more thing here. They cannot regulate their body temperature internally. So they are called ectotherms, and so they have to use the sun to warm themselves. In other words, to increase body temperature. So in a cold, during a cold day, they're going to be somewhat sluggish, and you might see them basking outside in the sun. All right, so those are the lizards. Let's talk about the other group within this order, and those are pretty distinctive. These are the snakes. They are limbless. They have a long, narrow body. And their jaws are able to open fairly widely. These are predators. And they're all carnivores. Okay, so those are the snakes. All right, let's look at the third group within the reptiles. And these, by far, are the more advanced of the reptiles, and that is the order Crocodilia. So this is C, order Crocodilia. So this includes the alligators and the crocodiles. These are definitely the largest of the reptiles, of the living reptiles. They do spend most of their time in the water, so they are aquatic. They are predators, and they will ambush their prey, usually at the water's edge. And they can, amazingly, they can leap out of the water to grab a prey item with tremendous speed. Even though they are reptiles, they are able to do that. All right, let's take a look at some other characteristics here. And we'll compare the alligator. I'll talk about the alligator. The alligator is mostly a freshwater animal. You might see it in swampy areas. And it tends to have a more rounded snout. The crocodile, and I should also say that Florida, I think, is our only state that has alligators. The crocodile is actually more adapted to even warmer climates. It prefers marine or saltwater environment. It has a more pointed snout, and most of the accounts that you might hear about of small children being eaten by crocodile or alligator, it's probably going to be, at least if it's in Florida, it's probably going to be an alligator. Crocodiles, as I mentioned, there are some in the very southern part of Florida, but they generally tend to be even further south, so they really like warm climates. Okay, one last comment about this particular group, the Crocodilia. They are much more closely related to dinosaurs and birds compared to turtles, lizards, and snakes. They do exhibit some complex behaviors. They do exhibit social behaviors. They do have courtship, nest building. They care for their young. So those are some more advanced characteristics that are shared more with the birds and the mammals. Okay, that's all I want to say about the living reptiles. I'm skipping the dinosaurs. I'm not going to ask you to memorize that section. I just want you to know about the living reptiles and the general characteristics of the amniotes.